positive story to tell. But there's perhaps no better example than the Windrush pioneer and ex-RAF serviceman, Sam King. Sam travelled on the MV Empire Windrush, and by 1983 he'd become the first elected black mayor of Southwark in London. In 1995, Sam worked with other pioneers to set up the Windrush Foundation, which keeps alive the memories and the legacy of those first post-war settlers in the United Kingdom. I was honoured last year to work with Arthur Torrington, whom many of you will know, to host a lecture about Sam's life and his contribution to British life. It is outstanding. Many on the MV Windrush had served in the Second World War and now were returning to help rebuild what was regarded as the mother country, as we've just heard. Many who arrived were dressed in their Sunday best, as many as you are here today, and they had their grips. Each of them their own curious stories that have been mentioned in letters that had reached them prior to their journey, were encompassing and meeting a strange and alien environment, as I've said. The Windrush generation overcame incredible adversity, as we all now know. They and their descendants have risen despite challenges along the way. Let's be honest, challenges of discrimination, inequality, intolerance. Communities coalesced and supported one another, especially through churches like this great church here, providing networks for kinship and community service, for family and faith, offering support in a new and challenging country. We've come here today, and as a country we've come a long way, but we've come here today to remember those early Windrush settlers and those who came after them, and to thank God for their enormous contribution, not just to our society, but to our way of life. This is why the Prime Minister announced last year that the 22nd of June would in perpetuity forever be recognised as a national day, as National Windrush Day. The announcement was made with two commitments. The first was to provide £500,000 with a budget, important words in government, with a budget. Grants for charities, community groups, local authorities, religious institutions, to help celebrate, commemorate and educate with regards to this momentous occasion. With thanks to the Windrush panel, as I've mentioned, a group made up of members from the Windrush community, I'm delighted that we've been able to fund and help with 50 projects around England, from Bristol to Birmingham, from Liverpool to Leeds, from Manchester to Warsaw. The aim is to recognise the Windrush generation and their descendants in the communities which they have helped build up. I've had, as I say, the pleasure of visiting a number of these projects already. This week I've been in the West Midlands, spending time with the African Caribbean Community Association in Walsall, the Way in Wolverhampton, Gazebo in Bilston, and the African Caribbean Community Initiative in Wolverhampton. I've seen projects in Leeds and Bradford, as well as here in Manchester. Launching a new community garden, seeing a short film, remembering Windrush, a great variety of things. And I've been struck by the importance these projects place on commemorating the Windrush generation, and not just for their descendants, but for all of us. This is part of our shared history, and it's important that it's taught in schools, that it becomes part of the established way of life, to know about the enormous contribution made by those of Caribbean descent. That's why our second commitment was to create a permanent and fitting memorial to the Windrush generation. So my colleague and friend, Baroness Floella Benjamin, has formed and chaired a Windrush Commemoration Committee to provide advice on just how to do this. And it was announced yesterday on Windrush Day by the Prime Minister that that permanent memorial is going to be in Waterloo Station. So important to the Caribbean community. It's the gateway to home for many of that community, standing as it does in the London Borough of Lambeth and at the busiest railway station in the country. I think, in fact, the busiest railway station in Europe. The Windrush generation and their descendants are rightly recognised today for their inspiration, their entertainment, their creativity, and their innovation. They've become our doctors, our nurses, our teachers, our academics, our lawyers, our musicians, our athletes, our leaders, our role models, and I do mean ours. This is one community, our family, our friends. There is no area of society that the Windrush generation and their descendants have not touched. When we think of sports, we think of people like Walter Tull or Linford Christie. Writers, we think of Andrea Levy. Entertainers, we think of Lenny Henry. Politicians, we think of Diane Abbott. The descendants of the Windrush generation have broken barrier after barrier. They've imprinted themselves on our society forever, thank goodness. The commitments we have made will only amplify the voice of this generation. In closing, thank you, a heartfelt thank you for all that you do. It's a real great privilege to be here this afternoon. I thank God also we had marvellous weather yesterday, which was a bonus. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to speak to you, and I look forward to hearing more about the personal stories and sharing the rest of this service together as we go forward together, one nation, celebrating Windrush Day into the future. Thank you.
As Chair of the Jamaica Society Manchester, I also extend greetings to everyone at home and abroad on this, our celebratory church service. Aims of the Society include encouraging Jamaicans to be proactive in the community, work with Jamaica High Commission, National Council of Jamaica, Jamaica National, in promoting the cause of our people at home and abroad, promote cultural, social, educational and economic welfare of our people. We visit and support people who are sick and in distress. Provide a service whereby Jamaicans in difficulty may seek advice. Make contributions to needy projects in Jamaica and in the UK. The Society has been going through a very positive period of innovative change, and we are encouraging everyone to be part of that change. I became Chair just over a year ago, and we've been working towards increasing our general membership and joint working with other like-minded organisations. We've organised several community events, including a Windrush Cultural Day, seasonal events, as well as a church service in partnership with the Church of God of Prophecy Restoration House last year. We meet on the second Sunday in each month at 5:30 p.m. at the West Indian Centre, Carlmore Road. And we look forward to seeing you at our meetings and hope you will get actively involved. Paulette spoke briefly earlier on about the Windrush Compensation Scheme. There will be a meeting being held in Manchester on Wednesday of next week at 6 p.m. at West Indian Sports and Social Centre, Westwood Street. Finally, I would like to thank our members and supporters, including Jamaica National, but in particular, I would like to thank Paulette Simpson for her unfailing continued support. Together we aspire, together we achieve. Thank you.
Good evening. So we have here the Together Dementia Choir on the Together Dementia Support, which is an organisation. Really it's about bringing people, especially the Black Afro-Caribbean people, out of isolation and trying to recognise their particular health issue that they have and come together and join together. But we've actually formed this choir, and this actually came about initially via a conference that we had that Dr. Dawn Edge put on, and obviously with Kadja, who normally leads the choir when we're singing. And since that event, which is quite a few years ago now, this has carried on, and obviously this membership has increased, and we're just going to sing a song for you. We hope that you will join in with us. It's a song that everybody should be able to recognise parts of it and join in. Thank you.
thank God for that. We are getting there. Just bear with us as we just bring this service to a close. And just want to just introduce our speaker for this evening, for this afternoon, Bishop Dr. Derek Webley, who is our National Secretary Treasurer of the New Testament Church of God in England and Wales. Can you just welcome him as he comes?
Thank you, Bishop Mackenzie. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful afternoon of worship and celebration. It's a great privilege that we are here, we're alive, and we can celebrate the contributions of those who are still with us and remember those who have gone. The person sitting next to you is probably the most precious person in the building next to you because you're celebrating it next to them. So just tell them thank you. Go on. I'm going to accelerate because I'm very conscious of time, and I can promise you I'll be very brief. Occasions like this don't need a long speech because everything that has taken place today has been a contribution to the whole, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you. Let me just place on record my regard and respect for the officiating clergy who are here, for Lord Bourne of Aberystwyth, and for Paulette Simpson, Executive Corporate Affairs and Public Policy, her team, and the organizing committee that have helped to shape this service today. But most of all, a big thank you to you for taking the time to come to make the service the wonderful occasion it is. So put your hands together for yourselves. I'm going to share a very brief word with you, and I'm going to use a particular portion of scripture out of its context. It reads as follows from the second book of Corinthians, the 4th chapter, verses 8 and 9. He says, "We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down," and I want you to underline the next few words, "but not destroyed." Underline that. But not destroyed. I want to pay tribute. Yesterday we celebrated our first Windrush Day, and I would like to acknowledge and thank all those who have been involved in making that happen. A big thank you to all of you. Why? Because it marks a particular day that we can now have on a calendar to educate and remind people of the great contributors that came to these precious shores. We gather here in this beautiful edifice in Cheetham Hill, Manchester, to host this national service celebrating the Windrush generation. The New Testament Church of God, from where I am, we are so proud to pay tribute to the Windrush generation for their magnificent contribution to the fabric of British society and their continued influence. When we think and cast our minds back to the journey from the coast of West Africa into the Caribbean, and many of our ancestors who lost their lives on that passage, how can we fail to be proud of who we are as a people? Scattered throughout the Caribbean, systematically placed to be robbed of our culture, our language, and our identity, to name a few, we survived. We are born survivors. Cast down, but not destroyed. We have made as a people our contribution in both world wars. The bloods of our foreparents were not spilled in vain, but we have to learn to tell our own story. I give thanks to God for the indomitable spirit of the Windrush generation that we celebrate today. When they came across to the shores of the United Kingdom, that spirit was not broken. In the midst of much adversity, they shone the bright light of hope that has and continues to serve the respective generations, troubled on every side, yet not distressed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, cast down, underline it in your spirits, but not destroyed. You see, the Caribbean community has made a significant contribution in local and central government, in business, in commerce, in race relations, inequalities, in the trade union movements, in public services, in education, in sports, entertainment, the arts, and the church. The church community has been at the heart of influence from a church and community perspective. The influence of the Caribbean-led churches cannot, must not, should not go unrecognized. Many Caribbean churchgoers will remember the feelings of rejection. We heard it from Daphne as she so eloquently shared her reflection. What a beautiful reflection. It brought it to life. Thank you so much, Daphne, for that. When they try to worship at mainstream established churches, rather than some abandon their faith and give up due to the rejection, spurned by some young leaders who set up their own churches. But I want to make this clear to all of us today. Not all Caribbean-led churches were established out of rejection. There were those who came from the Caribbean and maintained their church presence in the country, whilst others were being rejected, and we ought not to forget that. There were those who opened their homes so their faiths could be maintained, opened up community halls throughout many towns and cities across this nation. New Testament Church of God, along with others, were a part of that. The wider church community continues and contributes to community and this country in a holistic way. Their contributions have been tremendous. These churches have birthed Saturday schools, nurseries, after-school clubs, senior citizen clubs, outreach centers, and have other places of employment, to name a few. We have a right to make some noise and to tell our own story. We are a proud people, and we have done our people proud. We have produced tradesmen and women, social workers, counselors, lawyers, doctors, cleaners, gifted musicians, talented singers, dedicated ministers of religion. The list goes on and on and on. We are a proud people. We need to tell our story. Cast down, perplexed, downtrodden, but not broken. The Caribbean-led churches, which encompasses our Windrush generation, have been the greenhouse for much of the success in our communities. The Windrush generation have a story to tell. We need to celebrate and let others appreciate these contributions born out of the spirit of a Windrush generation. Blessed by Almighty God. They are blessed people. They are blessed people. Persecuted on every hand, but yet they were not broken. We must not underestimate our positive impact on British society. Our church communities are mediating institutions. Our role is to be more ambitious than delivering weekly or even daily services. Our role is to be powerful enough to have a voice in public governance in our towns, in our cities, and in our nation. To provide a powerful moral counterpoint to the heavy pressures of international markets and government service targets. Our role is to take a stance against injustice and disrespect shown to the Windrush generation, and to encourage our communities to engage in those things that add value and quality to the lives of those who have suffered at the hands of the establishment. If they go down, we go down. If they rise up, we rise up. They will not be broken. So I say to all of us as church followers, members, attendees, great to attend like this. But we must not allow the political space to be occupied by those who do not have our best interests at heart. We must raise our voices and take action and make sure that the silent voices are heard by those who have a platform, not to self-propagate, but to propagate on behalf of those who need justice on their side. We owe much to our Windrush generation. We are proud of them, and we will ensure that we will not drop the baton. We cannot afford to drop the baton. Our young people will not be allowed to drop the baton. No matter how they may be struggling, we will stand by them because they are part of that Windrush experience. We know there's challenges on our streets. We hear about guns and gangs and knives. We will do whatever we have to do to remedy that situation, working with others. But there are hundreds and thousands of young people who are doing extremely well, who are raising standards, who are a real contributor to our society. We must make room for the voices of success to be heard. Don't allow everyone to set our agenda for us. No. Broken, wounded, perplexed, but we will not be broken. So let me kind of pull this to a conclusion. For those who have gone on before us, we will remember you. We salute you. We honor you. Windrush Day means you will never be forgotten. And we'd like to thank the government and all those who have been a part for making that a reality. And for those who are still with us, we respect you. We honor you. And if we have let you down in any way, we are sorry. But thank you for being who you were in order that we could have a shoulder to be climbing on. So I end with a few quotations, and this is from the late Maya Angelou. This is what she said: love life, engage it, give it all that you've got, love it with a passion, because life truly does give back many times over what you have put in. Windrush generation, your work will never be in vain. No matter how bleak it looks, we're not going to drop the baton. She went on further and she said, if you're going to live, leave a legacy. Make a mark on the world that cannot be erased. If all we have is oratory skills, they will change our voices. If we write it, they cannot erase it.